Imagine coming home to find the person you trusted most in the world laughing, flirting with a stranger, while your whole life unravels right in front of you. It started as a small, quiet gathering, but what I walked into that night shattered everything I thought I knew. This is the story of how I learned the truth. Last Friday, Jessica mentioned she was planning a small, laid-back gathering with a couple of her colleagues. "It's nothing big," she assured me, her voice casual and light, like it was just another ordinary night. She practically shooed me out the door, suggesting I spend the evening at my buddy Tom's place. Normally, I'd think nothing of it, but this time, something gnawed at me. I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was, just an uneasy feeling deep in my gut. So, I made up my mind to cut my night short and head back home. I thought I'd drop by, maybe pick up something I might have left behind, and casually check on how this quiet gathering was going. But as I turned onto our block, I immediately sensed that something was off. Cars lined the entire street, way too many for just a small get-together. When I stepped inside, the first thing that hit me was the music. It wasn't some low-key background music for a casual evening, it was blaring, pounding through the walls like a full-blown party. I pushed open the door and was greeted by a scene that was far from what Jessica had promised. The house was filled with people I didn't recognize, drinks in hand, laughing and talking as if they owned every inch of the place. This was no small gathering. And that's when I spotted her. She was near the kitchen, talking to some guy I had never seen before, tall, athletic, leaning in way too close, his hand resting lightly on her back. She didn't notice me right away, too caught up in whatever he was saying. But it was the way she looked at him, the way her body subtly angled toward his touch, that made my stomach twist. This wasn't right. She had assured me it would just be a quiet evening with a few friends. But here I was, crashing what had clearly turned into something else. I stood there in the doorway for a moment, frozen as I absorbed the scene. Jessica hadn't noticed me yet, too wrapped up in her conversation with this guy, practically glued to his side. My mind was racing, struggling to make sense of what I was seeing, the laughter, the way she tilted her head, letting his hand rest on her back as if it belonged there. It was an intimacy I had never seen her share with a so-called friend. A knot formed in my stomach, tightening to the point where it felt like I couldn't breathe. Was I blowing this out of proportion? Overthinking? I wasn't usually the jealous type, but this felt different. Something was seriously off, and I wasn't about to just stand there and let it slide. I started making my way toward them, weaving through the crowd of strangers that had taken over our home. As I closed the gap, she finally noticed me. Her eyes widened for a split second, and her smile faltered. But then, just as quickly, she composed herself. That fake grin snapped back into place like nothing had happened. "Oh, you're back early," she said, pulling away from the guy just a little too fast, trying to act nonchalant. But I caught that flicker of panic in her eyes, even if it was just for a moment. The guy, whoever he was, didn't even blink. He just stood there, smirking as if he was in on some joke I wasn't privy to. "Yeah," I replied, my voice tight, eyes locked on Jessica. "Thought I'd check out this quiet gathering you mentioned." Her smile wavered but didn't completely fade. "Well, you know how it goes," she said, her tone just a bit too chirpy. "A couple of people from work brought some friends. It wasn't supposed to get this big." My gaze shifted to the guy, feeling the anger start to boil inside me. "And this is?" I asked, barely keeping my cool. Jessica hesitated for a split second. "Oh, this is Jake. He's a friend from the office." "Just a friend from work, huh?" But the way they'd been standing, the way she'd looked at him, it sure didn't seem like that. Something was definitely wrong here. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the two of them. Jake didn't look uncomfortable. If anything, he seemed completely at ease, too at ease, like he belonged here in my house, standing this close to my wife. That sick feeling in my gut clenched even tighter. I wasn't buying her story, not this time. A friend from work. I repeated, my tone sharp, letting the words hang in the air. I glared straight at Jake, feeling my fists tighten at my sides. You two seem pretty cozy for just co-workers. Jake raised an eyebrow, clearly unfazed. He took a slow sip of his drink, smirking as if this was all perfectly normal. We all get along really well at the office, he replied casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Jessica shifted uneasily next to him, shooting him a quick look, almost as if she was mentally begging him to stop talking. But it was too late. My mind was already racing, piecing together the little signs. I noticed how she subtly stepped in front of him, like she was trying to put some distance between us. Oh yeah? I said, keeping my eyes locked on her. Looks like you two have been getting along just fine. Her face hardened. Ethan, seriously, stop it. You're being ridiculous. It's just a party, alright? Nothing is happening. She laughed, but it was strained, empty. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. If it's nothing, then why do you look so nervous? I asked. She blinked, finally caught off guard. Her mask slipped for a moment. She bit her lip and glanced away, and I could feel it, the truth bubbling just beneath the surface, on the brink of spilling out. And then it happened. She glanced back at Jake, just for a second, but that was enough. The look they exchanged wasn't casual, wasn't friendly. It was loaded with something else, something that had been missing between us for a long time. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just in my head. Something was definitely going on. Jessica saw the realization hit me, saw the way everything fell into place in my mind. Her whole posture shifted, becoming more defensive, as if she knew she was cornered. She opened her mouth, probably to spin more lies, but I wasn't about to let her get away with it this time. How long, Jessica? I demanded, my voice cutting through the noise. Her eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw panic. I was done playing nice. How long has this been going on? I pressed. Jake stayed silent, his smug grin finally fading, but he didn't back off. He just stood there, watching. I could practically feel the tension between them, thick and undeniable. It was as if he was waiting for her to handle it, to lie again, probably. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, her voice shaky. You're overreacting, Ethan. There's nothing. Don't, I interrupted, my voice rising. I saw the way you looked at him. Don't stand there and tell me it's nothing. She opened her mouth again, but the words caught in her throat. Her eyes darted back to Jake, and there it was, guilt, plain as day. This wasn't just a fleeting glance. This was something real. I stepped even closer, glaring into her eyes. How long? I demanded, my fists clenched. Do you think I'm an idiot? How long have you been sneaking around? Jessica's face went pale, and the mask of calmness she wore finally shattered. She looked trapped, cornered, and for the first time that night, she had no quick comeback. There was no easy excuse. I could feel the heat building in my chest, anger mixing with betrayal. You promised me, I hissed, my voice trembling. You said this was just a small gathering. But this isn't just about a party, is it? How long have you been lying to me? She swallowed hard, glancing away, and that's when I realized the truth was even worse than I'd imagined. Jessica stood there, her eyes darting between me and Jake, her face as pale as if she were searching for some way out. But there was none. I wasn't going to let this go until I had the truth. Finally, she exhaled a shaky, uneven breath, her voice dropping to a whisper. A few months. My heart sank. Months? I echoed, almost unable to believe it. You've been sneaking around behind my back for months. She stayed silent, eyes fixed on the floor, refusing to meet my gaze. That silence was all the confirmation I needed. The room seemed to close in on me, the air growing thick and suffocating. I could still hear the party noises in the background, but they felt distant now, like I was trapped in some kind of twisted nightmare. The reality of what she had just admitted, months, hit me like a brick wall. I turned to Jake, who had been quietly watching the whole scene unfold, his face annoyingly calm, as if none of this mattered. I'd had enough. You knew she was married. You knew about me, I snarled, taking a step toward him. And you didn't care, did you? He just shrugged, his voice infuriatingly casual. Look, man, it wasn't that deep. Jess and I were just having some fun, nothing serious. Fun. That single word made something inside me snap. My blood boiled at the sheer disrespect, not just from him, but from her too. This wasn't some meaningless fling, this was my marriage, my life, and to them, it was nothing more than a game. I turned back to Jessica, my voice trembling with fury. This? I spat out, gesturing between them. This is what you threw everything away for. A few months of fun. You betrayed me for this. She flinched, but not soon enough. She was still clinging to some shred of denial, still reaching for excuses. Ethan, I didn't mean for it to go this far, she stammered, her voice shaky. It was never supposed to be serious. I didn't want to hurt you. Too late for that. The damage had already been done, and there was no way to undo it. Her pathetic excuses only added fuel to the raging fire inside me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't supposed to be serious. The way she was trying to downplay it, to twist the situation, was infuriating. She hadn't just broken my trust, she had shattered it. And now, standing here in front of me, she couldn't even take responsibility for the mess she had made. Not serious. I spat, my voice rising with anger. You call cheating on me for months with this guy not serious? You've been lying to my face, acting like everything was fine, and now you expect me to just, brush it off. Her face tightened, and for a brief moment, I saw something, guilt, maybe regret, but just as quickly, it was replaced with frustration. Ethan, I never wanted it to end like this, she pleaded, her voice almost desperate. But you've been so distant lately, so wrapped up in your own world. I felt invisible. My stomach turned at the manipulation in her words. She was trying to spin this, to make it seem like her cheating was somehow my fault, as if I had pushed her into it. So that's your excuse? I shot back. You felt neglected, so instead of talking to me, you went and found comfort in someone else. That's your justification. She didn't answer. The silence stretched between us, heavy and filled with all the things left unspoken. I glanced at Jake again, still standing there with that smug look on his face. But he wasn't the real issue here. It was her. She had allowed this to happen. She had made the choice to lie, to betray me, and now she stood there trying to defend it as if it was inevitable. You know what, Jessica? I said, my voice cold, every last shred of patience gone. I don't care about your excuses anymore. You made your choice. You didn't just cheat on me, you destroyed everything we had. I saw something flicker in her eyes, regret, realization, maybe both, but it was far too late. The damage was done. Jessica's face hardened at my words, but I could see the cracks forming in her composure. For a split second, it seemed like she might break down, like the weight of her actions was finally hitting her. But instead, she crossed her arms, her voice sharpening. You think this is all on me? That I'm the only one who ruined everything? Her sudden defensiveness caught me completely off guard. I had expected regret, maybe even some form of apology, but not this. She was still trying to shift the blame, and I was not about to let that slide. Oh, my mistake, I shot back, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You're absolutely right. I'm the one who let some random guy cozy up to me in our house, at our party. Clearly, this is all on me. She glared at me, frustration blazing in her eyes. You think I wanted things to end up like this? Do you even hear yourself, Ethan? We've been falling apart for years. I tried to talk to you, tried to make you realize how distant you've been, but you didn't care. I was lonely. Lonely. That word echoed in my head, twisting the knife even deeper. I wasn't going to let her play the victim here, not after everything she had done. Lonely. And Jake here was your fix. You didn't make an effort to fix anything between us. You went behind my back. If you were so miserable, you could have left, but instead, you chose to cheat. That's on you, not me. Jake stood there silently, his smug grin nowhere in sight. He was no longer part of this conversation. This was strictly between her and me. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling now, but there was a hollowness to her words, a weakness I couldn't ignore. But I was hurting too. You stopped caring a long time ago. Her words stung, but I wasn't about to let her turn this around. No, Jessica. You're not some victim here. You had a choice, and you made it. Now you're standing there trying to justify your actions, to pin this on me. But this? This is all you're doing. For the first time, she didn't have a quick comeback. It seemed like the reality of what she had done was finally sinking in. But it was too late for any of that. The silence between us hung heavy, and for the first time, I saw Jessica falter. The defiance, the blame shifting, it all drained out of her as she stood there, staring at the floor. Her arms fell to her sides, her posture changing from defensive to lost, as if she had no clue what to say next. And honestly, neither did I. But the anger still roared inside me. It wasn't enough for her to just stand there, looking regretful now that her lies were out in the open. I needed her to grasp the full extent of what she'd done, to face the devastation she caused, to acknowledge that it was her actions, not mine, that had shattered everything. You really don't get it, do you? I said, finally breaking the silence. My voice was low, trembling with the weight of all the things I had left unsaid. You didn't just cheat on me, Jessica. You broke me. You made me question everything, every single moment, every word, every memory. And now you stand there, acting like it was unavoidable, like I'm the one who pushed you into this. She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite decipher, regret, guilt, maybe even fear. But I couldn't tell if it was the fear of losing me or the fear of facing the consequences of her actions. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she whispered. I never planned any of this. I was just. I don't know. I was lost, and Jake, he was there. I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. He was there. That's all it took. Some guy showing up and giving you attention. Is that really what you expect me to believe? That it just happened? She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. She knew there were no more excuses, no more lies left to tell. And for the first time that night, it seemed like she finally realized the enormity of what she had done. But it didn't matter now. It was too late. I took a step back, the finality of it all washing over me. I'm done, I said, my voice quieter but resolute. You can keep your excuses, your guilt, whatever you need to sleep at night. I'm done with this. I turned to leave, and this time, she didn't try to stop me. As I reached the door, something in Jessica shifted. For the first time that night, she took a step toward me, her voice cutting through the silence. Ethan, wait, she called out, her voice desperate now, cracking like the mask she'd been clinging to for so long. But there was nothing more to say. I hesitated at the door, not because I wanted to stay, but because some part of me needed closure. I needed her to feel the gravity of this moment, to understand that this wasn't something she could just backtrack on with a few apologies and a sad expression. You don't get to do this, I said, still facing the door, my back turned to her. You don't get to stand there after months of lying and suddenly act like it matters now that I'm leaving. You made your choice, Jessica, and now you have to live with it. Her voice broke again, even weaker this time. I know. I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can. I turned around, cutting her off with a look. Fix this? You think there's anything left to fix? I shook my head, disbelief and sorrow churning inside me. You destroyed everything, Jess. You took what we had and tossed it aside like it meant nothing. And now you want to fix it. Tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to feel sympathy, not anymore. I'd been shattered by her betrayal, torn apart by the lies, by the months she spent pretending everything was fine while laughing and flirting with someone else. I don't know what you thought was going to happen, I continued, my voice icy and final, but this, it's over. Her tears finally spilled over, but they did nothing to move me. It was too little, too late. I had given her everything, and she had crushed it without a second thought. Without another word, I turned and walked out the door, leaving Jessica, her tears, and the ruins of our life behind me. Stepping out into the night, the cold air hit me like a slap. Each step I took away from that house felt like I was dragging myself out of quicksand, like I was finally freeing myself from the suffocating weight that had held me down for so long. The sound of the party faded behind me, along with the life I once thought I had. But instead of relief, all I felt was a hollow emptiness. The anger, the betrayal, it had scorched through me like a wildfire, leaving nothing but ashes in its wake. I had lost Jessica long before tonight, and maybe, deep down, I had always known it. But witnessing it play out, hearing her excuses, watching her stand there with that guy, Jake, it tore me apart in ways I never saw coming. I got into my car and just sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel. The future I had envisioned, all our plans, every promise we had made, it was all gone now. And I was left with the stark realization that I didn't have a clue what came next. Then, as I stared out at the dark, empty street, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. Jessica had made her choice, and now I had made mine. She had chosen lies, betrayal, and so-called fun. I had chosen to walk away. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was reclaiming control of my own life. Taking a deep breath, I started the engine, the soft hum of the car filling the silence as I pulled away from the curb. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there. I knew it would take time to heal, to rebuild, but I also knew one thing for sure, I deserved better. And from this moment on, I wouldn't settle for anything less.